right, y'all. Welcome to the very first episode of what I'm so excited to give to you called Transforming the Truth. If you watch the intro video, you will know pretty much what this whole series of interviews and episodes and things on history is geared towards. But I am so happy that I get to do the first interview with my love. This is Savoie. He goes by Brandon. He has so graciously been willing to be the first one to sit down with me and has been so supportive about just doing this whole thing. So he's doing the first interview, but behind the scenes he is there doing the audio and the video and all that stuff. So although I'm in front of the camera, he is so very much a part of this. So thank you for sitting with me. We have had many conversations about all this kinds of stuff, but
right.
I mean, a lot of people don't really get to hear this.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it's something you have many conversations about with other people, unless I'm...
No, the stuff that we talk about, no, I don't think that's everyday conversation. I think that's, reserved for us.
Well, I mean, even so, I mean like other black people, because you've seen a few other interviews that I've done before,
right.
But are those conversations that like you guys have? Because I feel like maybe it's a little different, you know, obviously I'm a white female,
right.
And we have these conversations, but do you have these conversations with other, you know, your black friends or family or anything like that?
On occasion, yeah. There'll be those, like an event will happen and, you know, the first thing, your black friend or family member will text you, contact you and say, hey, like, what's going on? Like, first, it's always a checkup to make sure everybody's good and everybody's straight and, you know, doing well. And then you kind of get into the reason why the checkup occurred and then you guys talk about it for a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, not every single situation, but yeah.
Because I feel like that, I mean, obviously with everything going around, that's extremely taxing.
It would be very exhausting to deal with that, to have those conversations on a regular basis, yes.
But to know that you have those other people that obviously you reach out to or that you guys check on each other is a little more comforting, even though the circumstances are completely terrible. But
yeah, definitely. You don't feel so alone, I guess, in those situations. So even though you have other people to talk to, that you can express yourself, sometimes you might need someone that understands exactly what you're going through or how you feel in that moment. So
all right, so we took it a little off, but I'm going to ask how old you are. I know how old you are, but you don't, obviously.
I am 38.
And you look 25. We won't go there. And where were you born? Where are you from?
I am from Louisiana, right outside New Orleans. Was there for a little bit, and then I basically grew up in California. You know, came early, and so I've been in California pretty much all my life. So
you're like, I was born there, but here I am.
But
yeah. What's your like heritage? Do you know what your direct lineage comes from and stuff like that?
Let's see. Well, on my mother's side, there's Creole, I guess you could, I mean, if you want, for lack of better terms, you know, so that's...
Is that, so, well, let's just start with that, because people might not know. I didn't
may not know what Creole is.
So Creole, is that like French and...
Creole is a mixture of all the people that were in the Louisiana area, you know, when they were first settling and all that stuff. So Spanish, French, African, and Native American. So that's is what Creole would be.
Okay.
And then my father was adopted, so, but I believe like his birth parents, like they're from Jamaica. They're from the Caribbean, so.
He had an accent, right?
No, my father didn't have an accent.
He didn't have an accent?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because he was adopted very young, so, and he was born here, so, and then adopted, so so that he never had an accent, no.
Oh, okay.
He could get into that, but
Right.
but no, he didn't talk like that. No.
Because those are the roots, and
Right.
like, sometimes
Right.
they just
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Now, did you? So you can't. So most of your family obviously is in Louisiana.
Right.
So did you grow up around like your family being out here?
Well, I did because at one point everybody moved here.
Right.
Well, not everybody, but like my mother's twin sister, and her older sisters, her two older, they all moved here.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all together for a little bit, my cousins and everybody, and then everybody moved back. And then
Gotcha.
she was like one of the only ones that stayed. But then whenever there was, a holiday or
Right.
vacation from school or anything like that, we would always go back.
Okay.
And a lot of times I actually like flew by myself to.
Because she went sooner and then you waited, or.
It was just me. You're gonna go visit your family. Bye.
Oh. She's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
I flew from a very young age by myself as well, but I didn't fly that far. I was between here and Vegas.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that's like a 45-minute flight.
Right, yeah.
If I'm young and I'm like 10 or 12 and I'm getting on a, 3-4 hour flight?
It's about 3.5, 4 hours, because usually we fly into Houston because I have family in Houston, my uncle.
Okay.
And then I visit him and my cousins or whatever, and then we would drive about 3.5 hours to Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you notice that your skin color was different at a very young age, or did you not? Because I want to know the process of how that comes to fruition, because we see little kids and they don't like
Have any?
they have no, and I love it. It's the greatest thing.
Right.
They have no concept of he has darker skin than I do, or he has, sometimes they'll notice different color eyes, but that's because they're like learning their colors and stuff. But different shades of brown or black or gray or, yellow or undertones, whatever, they don't notice those things.
Right.
So did you notice that, or was it like brought to your attention? Because I feel like everybody has a different.
Yeah. As a child, no, I don't feel like I ever noticed skin tone in terms of like other people.
Right.
And I never really thought about it differently in my household. But even though my mother is super. Because when you're from Louisiana, like, you have all those different hues of skin.
Right.
Even though you would consider yourself to be black, so my mother is super light, and her twin sisters are not identical, but was super light at the time, and then my other aunts were dark, and then my uncles were like my color. So I had like this whole. My father was not dark, but he wasn't light either. So I saw all the different shades of what black could be. And so I never focused on the color of the skin, but I could always tell who was black based on features. That's how I learned that stuff.
Okay.
Like nose, lips, like you kind of like get an idea of, yeah.
I never really. It's funny because we've had conversations about that, and there's people who I'm like, I wonder, like where they're from if we don't know anything about them, and you're like, I bet they're from here, here, and here, and I'm like, where did you even come from? Where did that even come from? And then he will explain like, oh, it's these facial features or whatever, and I'm just like, maybe, but for me, I don't, and I think I don't do that because stereotypically there's other features for people not necessarily black that they're like, oh, that's a feature of so-and-so or whatever. And it's like, well, what if they're not that? And you're like, oh, you must be like, I'd be like, that would be devastating. Plus, it's very judgmental and discriminatory initially.
True.
But,
but then again, that's not.
But when you've seen it all in front of you and that's your family, I kind of understand that. Yeah.
But you also don't make it a habit to be like, what are you? You must be, no, you don't do that. That's something that you would do.
I'm so, I have to control myself because I'm very interested in that stuff, and not because I want to cast people out or put them in categories. I just like to keep myself around all different types of people, but I'm also I'm at a point where I want to be very appropriate is not the word. I want inclusive. I want to be very inclusive of everybody's culture and what is acceptable and not acceptable and things like that, because you know me, I like to bring everybody together. So, but anyways, so you didn't necessarily notice that like within your family, and you knew there were different shades or whatever. But when did you realize I'm black and that kid's not? Or did you just not?
Well, I'll say that I've always had a sense of who I was. I feel like that was something that was instilled in me very early. So I don't feel like there was ever a point where I didn't realize that I was a black child or a black, you know what I mean? I don't think I ever went through that. I always knew who I was. And then seeing other people like, okay, like that, they're not like me necessarily, but that didn't really matter at all.
You're just like, we're just not the same.
We're just different colors, but that's still my boy, that's still my friend, so yeah.
So I think the difference and what I'm seeing and hearing, because I've done a few others, is that there's no pull or drag between these groups because there's no whiteness. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not, I mean, there's French and all that stuff, but that's still like Creole, and that's that. There's no, my mom is white and my dad is black, or my dad is white and my mom is black, so I'm half and, I'm half and half. Like, to me, you're still mixed. I mean, because obviously you have all these different cultures in you, but I think that when you have a white mom or a white parent and a black parent, that it's maybe a little bit of identity thing, and you have to figure out what you identify with, because you go home and you see both halves.
Right.
But, I mean, so was your skin color ever an issue for you growing up?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't feel like I've ever experienced anybody treating me differently because of the way I look. No.
No?
I don't think so.
So, to me, your personality kind of shines through no matter what color you on the outside. Because I've seen a lot of racist people just want to be his best friend. Which I'm not saying is bad, but I don't know, I just think there's something there, and I can't put my finger on it. But
I wish I could figure that out. So
because you know what I'm talking about, obviously.
It happens all the time.
And I'm just like, what is happening?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I wish I had that answer so I could give everybody the tip so that everybody could get along.
I know, right? Yeah.
No, I don't know what it is. I mean, no, I can't. I was gonna say something, but I don't know if that really has anything to do with why that would be the case. So I won't say it.
Okay.
But because it doesn't really add to it. So
yeah.
No.
So your mom and dad are roughly the same age?
Yeah.
Okay.
2-year difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they grew up in, so like what set of year? I won't go into the year your mom was born or anything like that, but like she was born in the...
My mom was born in the 50s.
Okay. So did they ever talk to you or tell you about, or did you ever ask them about what it was like for them when they were growing up?
Yeah. I asked my mom about that because, I mean, that was the South.
Yeah.
You know, so she grew up in the South. She went to a segregated school.
Yeah.
You know, in her elementary and all that. So, yeah, I asked her about that. From what she told me, she obviously, because that's all you know at the beginning, right. So it wasn't even a thing for her to go into an all-black school. And then when all that stuff started to shift, and then she was able to go to a school where everybody was there, she said it was a little of a culture shock, like seeing, not because she hadn't seen white people before,
Right.
but it's just now that you're, seeing them every day in your class and through your school and all that kind of stuff. So, but she never mentioned if she was treated any differently or felt, like the racism through or anything like that. I don't even know if that's something she would have told me, because I asked her this when I was a lot younger.
Right.
So I don't know if she would have explained to me fully what she may have went through in that situation, because she may have thought that's not pertinent information.
Right. So she grew up in the South, and then she went to a segregated school and everything like that. But the neighborhood, was it primarily a black neighborhood, or is that how she had to?
Well, her upbringing is a little different, because like she grew up on a farm.
Oh.
So
so there's really not any close neighbors.
Yeah, so it's not
so
it's
big.
not really like so she grew up on a farm. They had, all kind of animals, and yeah, my grandfather. Yeah, so.
Okay. That's actually something I didn't know.
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't like this big, huge, industrial size farm, but
right, but
like just
even even an acre is
right.
gigantic.
Yeah, so
I mean, maybe not to y'all, but to me it's huge.
Yeah.
Do you think that any of those experiences affect how she acts now, or do you think? Because to me, she's like you, and you are who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if, I mean, in my opinion, I don't believe the stuff that she went through changed her in a way. I think she's been who she is and will continue to be. That's just her.
That's just who she is.
I mean, obviously, I don't know her any differently.
Right.
So, and just the way that she is and how I'm so much like her, I can't see things that could have traumatized her or hardships changing who she became. She just continued to be who she was through it.
Right.
These are things that I went through and I dealt with and experienced, but I'm still me throughout it. So.
Yeah, I can see that. So did she ever have the talk with you? And when I mean the talk, I don't mean the sex talk, obviously, because we're not talking about that. I mean the talk about being a black male. Like, I know it's easier to say, be careful, I love you, when they're walking out the door. But
right.
I cannot imagine everything that has happened in not even just the last couple years, but for the last 50, 60 years, all of your lifetime,
right.
having my black son walk out the door to after he starts driving, or even before that, walking to school or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
I don't feel like my mother and I had that talk. My father and we had that talk. I mean, I don't know if it was that in depth, but I recall certain conversations or certain things that were said, like in passing and leaving, just, hey, be careful out there, like things like that, like just before you would leave their sight, leave the house, go somewhere where they're not going to be around and they're waiting for you to come back to them.
Right.
Hey, do this, don't, like that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like, hey, you're a black man in America and oppression.
Right.
It wasn't that talk.
Yeah.
But it was just the little nuggets of, just little things that they would throw in your pocket before you would leave, that kind of stuff.
So was there any, like, let's say after you started driving, was there any, like, hey, if you get pulled over, this is what you do? Yeah. Because
my father taught me how to drive.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I had like a driving instructor class too, but like when I wasn't doing that, then
you had to do all the hours or whatever.
Yeah. So he taught me that. So he was always like, just be careful, know where you are, know where your stuff is, so that if you get pulled over, you can say, hey, the stuff is here. Reach,
Yeah. Okay.
And that's crazy. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off for your next
you're fine.
question, but Just imagine how crazy that is, that someone has to, like, that has to be something that's passed down to your children. Hey, when the police pull you over, you have to do this, this, and this. Why? Not because it's it's proper procedure for what you do when you interact with cops. It's so that you live through the traffic stop.
That's insane to
That's
me.
insane.
I mean, and that's a great point, and that's when people watch this, especially people that are not of color or minorities that may not have encountered things like that or had to go through things like that.
Right.
Because to me, it's like, for me, it was, don't get pulled over. You get pulled over, we're taking your car. And that's fucking white privilege right there, in and of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, and then what's the statistic of me getting pulled over him getting pulled over? Like, do you know what I'm saying? So, in hearing that and knowing that his parents told him that as he's leaving, whether it was directly, indirectly, little pieces here and there, like, think about the fact that your parents did not have to tell you that.
Right.
That is insane to think about.
And just when all that, stuff was really kicked up and was really happening, I went to see my mother, and, we talked, we had a really good talk, and then I was leaving, and she was like, be careful out there. And I wanted to break down and cry. Like,
right?
My mother, even at this age, has to, like, is she still worried about her adult son? Like, I was like, man, this world is crazy.
I'm over here like, okay, keep it together.
Yeah.
Because to me, I can't, like I said, I cannot imagine just being like, oh, my 38-year-old son, hey, you be careful out there. Knowing that he's a great person, like, has never gotten into any major trouble, yet there's so much shit going on in the world that I still have to tell him.
Yeah.
I'm really worried.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That is... So, like you said, you just talked to her. Do you think that that's the most direct and probably straightforward conversation that you guys have had about, like, race itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As when all that stuff from 2020 was happening, and the Black Lives Matter movement was, like, really kicked up, and every other day somebody was getting shot or assaulted and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't have to, but we had a couple of conversations about that stuff happening and, how to stay safe and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like,
And to me, it's crazy because everybody's been discreetly racist for so long, which has, I don't want to say protected everybody. It's essentially swept it under the rug because we just never saw it.
Right.
Not to say it wasn't still happening, but now 38, and she has to directly have that conversation with you because it's so prevalent and so out there in front of everybody so much more.
Yeah, like, she could turn on the news one day and it could be like there's another police shooting and it could have been me, like that's the fear that she, was dealing with at that time, so.
So, switching to Black history, how did you learn about your Black history? Just like being around your family, or?
Well, when you say like my Black, you mean in terms of
let's start with your heritage. So like your Black history, like, because I know a lot of kids just learn it because it was a school project, and then there's people who are just like around their Black family, and they're like, oh well, we're like this, and we came from this, and
For me, it was more about wanting to know more. So, like, me doing research on it and getting information from my family when I could, when they had. So, like, I would try and go back as far as I could with my family, and then where it stopped, that's when I was like, you can go on Google and research and look up that kind of stuff and find out where these names are and who did what and even pictures and stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as Black history in general, so like I've said, and I will repeat, I don't even know how many times, because people need to know that, one, there's a Black History Month now. 2, many schools still don't even add it to their curriculum. And 3, even if they do, they're teaching you about the stuff that you already know, the abridged versions, the whatever. But we all know that we are not taught enough Black history, that it keeps coming, all this stuff keeps coming up a little bits at a time, and you figure out, like, oh, that's not the real inventor. That was stolen from, you know, that idea or that actual invention came from this person, and it was a Black person who, you know, thought of it first. So there's so much Black history, basically, to go through, and I think what started a lot of this is knowing how much Black history you actually know. So how did you learn about, like, Black history for yourself?
Well, in the beginning, it's, you know, you when you're young, you learn it in school. Like, they teach, okay, this is Black History Month. So when you grow up, you just are kind of waiting for February because, you know, okay, that's where this is where I'm going to learn more stuff about, you know, myself and my heritage and all that kind of thing. When you're younger, this is before computers and all that kind of stuff. So you didn't have this information readily available unless you had, like, Encyclopedia Britannica or you went to the library or you know, stuff like that. So you were kind of waiting for February to come around to see if you would learn new stuff.
Right.
And I felt like when I was in school, I felt like I was learning different things until I got to a certain point, and then it's like it was starting to repeat itself, and you're like, okay, yeah, I already know this stuff, and like that's cool that you guys are teaching this stuff that you feel is important, but there's so many other layers and aspects to it, because everybody knows, you know, Martin Luther King, your Malcolm X, your Rosa Parks, your George Washington Carver, and you might learn, and Harriet Tubman, and you might learn Frederick Douglass, and so I mean that's cool, but there's so many other people that invent things and have done stuff that affect your everyday life that you don't even know about, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that this was invented by a Black person, or this was, or the idea for this is. And so that's when you have to figure out if it's really important to you, and if it is, then you take it upon yourself to research it and find out more stuff.
Yeah. So most of yours came from just doing your own research after you realized, okay, I already know this stuff. I want new stuff. Okay.
I feel like once I got into toward the end of middle school and then further on going to high school, like I had to realize, like, I'm going to hear the same stuff over and over.
Yeah.
Now that I'm, you know, of mind to know that. So then I was like, I have to figure it out for myself. So I have to go to the school library, or I have to, you know, borrow somebody's Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever the case is. Talk to some old people and see what they know about it, because they'll tell you, oh yeah, back in the day, such as So I mean, you'll hear that stuff, and then you just got to cross-reference and make sure, is that true? Really? Okay, well, let me go check it out. And then you find out some shit, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy too, because it's like, why don't? It's a whole last month. Not to mention it's the shortest month of the year, but it's a whole last month.
Well, yeah. The only thing I'll say about that is because, I mean, that's always been a thing where it was like, oh, they picked the shortest month to give the Black people, and to be okay, yeah, it is February, it is the shortest month, but that's only because the initial week, they made it a Black History Week or Negro History Week, and that just happened to be, you know, in February. And so then President Carter decided to extend it a whole month in the 70s, in the late 70s.
Okay.
So, but it was only a week from 1926 up until like 78, I think, 76 or 78. So.
So yeah, I mean.
So it's like, hey, the stride went from a week to a whole month. So it's like you got sometimes, even though it's a short month, you got to take your victories when you can. You know.
I mean.
Some months are only 30 days, so we're only 2 behind. That's fine.
Make up for it. Weekend.
And if it's a leap year, we got an extra day.
Oh, there you go.
So you know, this thing, you got to pick your battles and you got to find victories where you can.
That's true. That is very true. Is there anything that you really like about Black history or want to teach other people that they may not necessarily know? Either something new or a narrative of a piece of Black history that is not necessarily correct?
I don't know if I have anything that's not correct, other than maybe like the light bulb, for instance. Everybody knows that, or Thomas Edison is credited for the light bulb, but the copper filament inside, which creates the light, was invented by a black man. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't have put the structure together without that piece.
Right.
So that's off the top of my head is something that, or like the first home security system was created by a black woman in the 60s.
That's true.
You know, she was a nurse, and she was at home a lot because her husband was off working other jobs, and so when she would come home, she'd be home by herself late at night, and there were people in the neighborhood had experienced break-ins, so she created this whole system with cameras and a microphone, and connected it to the house phone so that she could call the police and all that. So
there you go. That's crazy to just do that.
Right.
Like, I'm not safe. I'm not, like, that, yeah.
Yeah. To have the fortitude to be like, yeah, I'm not safe here.
Let me figure this out.
But I'm not
leaving.
Yeah, and I'm not, someone who's just going to sit here and be a victim. Like, I'm going to figure it out how to protect myself and maybe help protect others. And so I'm just going to do it. Yeah, that's crazy.
Do you have somebody from Black history that you look up to?
That's a tough question because there's...
Maybe not look up to. Maybe that's the wrong wording. Maybe it's like you just appreciate and see what they did or what they tried to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
the crazy thing is everybody would say Martin Luther King, right? Because
or Malcolm X, right?
And even though that's kind of cliche, like Malcolm X, I think if they researched it more, they would find out that they were probably like Malcolm X just as much as they did Martin Luther King.
Right.
Or if they did their research more, they would find out that Martin Luther King was leaning more towards Malcolm X towards the end of his life. When he thought all, the peaceful protests and the marching and turn the other cheek, like God said, and all that stuff was the way to get it done. And he just kept finding himself in jail and victims of attacks and things like that. And so when he was in jail one time, he wrote to Malcolm X, and he was like, this stuff isn't, I've tried to do it this way and be holier than thou, and it's not working. And they don't care how we protest or what we're protesting. They still don't care. So maybe I need to look at what you're doing in those scenarios, in those situations, and maybe that would change.
So and it's crazy because you can see the comparison now between what he's saying and why he was saying it, because still, even with the protests and everything happening now, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, we could be peacefully protesting or sitting in front of cops on our knees, and they don't care that it's a peaceful protest and that it's not hurting anybody, but yet you are still choosing the violent side of that, which basically incites the violence. So how does that really work out?
Well, see, what they'll never tell you is that it's never about the protest, because throughout history they'll tell you, oh, you can protest, we don't mind. So then when you protest, oh, but don't protest like that. Okay, so we can't do sit-ins, we can't boycott, we can't march.
You can't kneel.
So then you find a new way. Okay, so now I'm kneeling. Well, no, you can't do that because now you're against the flag and you're against the troops. But a veteran is the person who told Kaepernick, when we honor somebody who's fallen, we take a knee. So that was given to him by a white officer, a veteran of the Army, to do that. But no, you can't protest like that.
But
So we'll put on shirts that say "I can't breathe" after Eric Garner died. No, but you can't protest like that either. Why? Because protests are supposed to be uncomfortable. They're supposed to be inconvenient. That's the whole point. We don't like what's happening, so we're going to infringe on your convenience until you decide changes should be made. But so then people will say, yeah, you can protest, but then they're trying to dictate to you how you can protest. Well, there's only so many ways you can peacefully protest until it becomes violent.
right.
And then, so that's the plan, to continue to push out the ways for you to peacefully protest until you become violent. Then they go, see, look at them.
Now look at you.
Look at you. Look, you don't even know.
Now you're going to jail.
Yeah.
And that's the whole
Yeah,
point.
look at them. They're violent.
Throw
They're
them in the
thugs.
system,
Yeah.
and here we are.
Yeah. So it's just this never-ending cycle of trying to create the narrative that you're violent and you're disruptive and you should be in jail and thugs and all that. When after you spent years and years and years and decades and centuries trying to
Do it peacefully. And not be put in the system. But that's what they're trying to do, because once they put you in the system, they essentially control you and all the money associated with what you do inside of that system.
Right. Meanwhile, when they had a problem with England, they went to war. Anyway.
And here we are. I mean, he's not wrong. Let's just say that. He's
like what's going
wrong.
on here.
Uh-huh.
But anyway,
Like,
I digress.
what is something that you love about your blackness, or just you're black?
What do I love about?
Like, is it the black community? Like, just...
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that, I mean, I think I would be who I am no matter what color I was, but I have a lot of pride in the color of my skin and the people that look like me. And I just feel like the main thing is the influence that we have on everybody.
When it comes to music, style, all that stuff that everybody's culturally appropriating.
Yeah, because it's always urban, it's always street, until somebody who's not of that culture decides that I like that, and now I'm going to take that and put my, designer label insignia on it, and now it's on the runway with somebody who's got cornrows, and you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
So,
We've had many conversations about that as well.
So I mean, it's just the influence that we bring to everyone. I think that's like I don't think that there's ever going to be a time when black people aren't the. Well, I can't say maybe there won't be a time, but I just have a hard time seeing it where that's not the case, where we're not the influence of what's happening. And then I'll say by the time it gets to somebody else, that is out, and then we're on to something else. So, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So speaking along the lines of influence, and I had mentioned cultural appropriation. Sorry. Do you think there's a way to incorporate that influence without making it cultural appropriation? Because, like, let's take an example. I'll give you an example. So, Kim Kardashian with the braids. That's the main one that I can think of.
Yeah.
And before that even happened, I will tell you, for years and years and years and years and years, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do braids one time, blah, 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 blah. Looked into it, decided which ones I liked, where they came from, how they were done, whatever. And then I was like, I can't do this. And, I mean, you know me enough to know the reasons why I can't, like, bring myself to do it, even though I have had so many of my black female friends or my friends in general say,
you should do it.
It's fine. If that's what you want to do, then you should do it. If people are going to hate it, they're going to hate it. But if they really knew you, they would know, you know, like, it's not in a form of cultural appropriation. It's in a form of celebrating that, even though that's not you.
Right.
But I think that gets mixed up in the influence part. And I think it takes more than knowing who somebody is to make it not cultural, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, like, where or if there is a line, like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, I'm going to go braid my hair. Too bad. That's just what I'm going to do. Okay, now what am I going to do? Put out this Instagram selfie stating why I think it's okay for me to do this and explain everything that I know that everybody could Google. Like, no, like, you have to know me to know that that's okay.
Right.
So, using, like, those two examples, like, and especially being an influence, which we're trying to do here, which is another reason why I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Where is that line, or should you just not do it? Like Kim Kardashian, I'm sorry, she should have just not done the braids.
Well, everything that you just said makes total sense. And so, and even the reasoning of your, you know, black female friends for saying, like, yeah, go ahead and do it. As complicated as cultural appropriation is, it's really all about giving credit where it's due. I think that's the main thing. Like, black people are obviously, like, very forgiving and very accepting. And so if you wanted to do that, and you had, let's say you had nothing but black female friends, and you wanted to do that, they would all be like, yeah, go ahead and do it. We'll do it for you. And we're going to take this group picture. It's going to be us and we all chilling, right? But they know me. And they know you. Right. But that would also come with them knowing who you are and how you feel about, you know, the black culture and this isn't something that I want to do, but I feel like I am being welcomed to do.
Right.
Whereas someone like Kim Kardashian, who we know is very entrenched in the black culture because all the men that she dates are black men. Even Chris Humphries, to some degree, he's part of black.
Right.
So, I mean, all the men that we've known her to be with, and all the women have been within her family, for the most part, except for Courtney, have been black men. Her mom was with a black man.
So, but they've never celebrated that.
That's why.
I think I just had that light bulb moment.
That's why, and I was going to get to, that's why people are so quick to pounce on them, not them, on her and Chloe and even her mom, because we know what you guys are around and involved with on a regular basis. And yet, never at any point have you come to acknowledge where the influences come from, immerse yourself in the culture in which you're taking things from, and giving credit where it's due. Because if you said, hey, you know, I'm wearing my hair in these braids just because I was influenced by such and such, who I love, and yada, yada, and
I learned this, and this.
Right.
I'm sorry, you should have learned something.
Like that, even if other people who aren't black were like, well, that's appropriation, you would get the support of the black people. Like, you know what? Yeah, she's not, but we know where her heart is. We know what she's been around. And she's given her reasons, even though, because you're a person of fame and, you know, influence, you would have to make that, like you were talking about the Instagram post of like, why am I doing this?
And she did, but she but she went back to another white person wearing braids. I don't know. I don't remember her name.
Was it Bo Derek? Was it Bo Derek with the?
Yes. And it's like, ma'am.
Right. But, okay, so you went back to, so you referenced Bo Derek as to why you decided to get the box braids like that. But where do you think Bo Derek got that from? Like, the braids.
Just, like.
Yeah. Like, see, and that's the other thing. Now you have to understand, like, you have to do the history. You have to do you got to do the science. Like, you have to go back and figure out, okay, well, where did she get that from? Like, that hairstyle isn't just a hairstyle because they decide that's how they want to do it. It's for protection for the hair. Like, all the hairstyles that...
And it's been around a very long time.
Right. All the hairstyles are out of necessity. They're not... It just happened to look that way, and other people thought that was cool, but that's all necessity.
And they've switched it up and done them different ways and whatnot, but it's still, to this day, which I actually have learned, that no matter what the braids are, how the braids are done, almost all of them are made to protect the hair because it keeps it from coming out and splitting and all. I mean, I could go into a lot of it, but. And that's just talking about hair and braids. And that was just the example that I came up with. But when you think of other things like Eminem, a lot of people for a long time were like, oh, it's cultural appropriation, blah, 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 blah. And then he worked with Dr. Dre, and he started speaking about what his influence is and how much he knows about hip-hop and where it came from and things like that. And so you can love something that is from a different culture, but you have to acknowledge, I think that, I'm just working through this because I've realized, and it's not about going back and being like, okay, this is where this came from. Let me put this information in an Instagram post. Like, if you're gonna do it, it should be because you love it. But why do you love it? You love it because I've learned about it and I appreciate it and this and that. Like, I'm not doing it because, oh, I look fly. Like, no, ma'am. Like, that's not. That's. I think that's the difference. There's the line between, oh, I love it or whatever, and then there's the celebratory and the appreciation and the acknowledgement from what it is and where it came from. Right. But deeply rooted, like, actually, like, I really appreciate this. Like, I love it, and I've learned so much about it or whatever.
Yeah, like, it's super cool to think that that's dope, and oh, you know what, I want to try it. I look good in that, too. Okay, so now, since you're taking it from somewhere else, what is it about that speaks to you where you feel like, I want to be entrenched in that, or I want to look like that? So now, since you're a person of influence and, you know, as sad as it is to say, you can't just do things that you want to do anymore. Like, there has to be some kind of reason, or not even reason, but there should be an explanation. There should be some acknowledgement. And that's all, I think that's all that people who have their culture become part of mainstream is just the acknowledgement that that's where this came from, so that others know that that's where I need to go. That's where I need to give the acknowledgement to moving forward. Instead of Kim Kardashian coming out with these braids, and then now these designers on runways putting their, you know, other models in these braids and giving, oh, we got that from Kim. But no, you didn't, because she got that from, like, so that way the acknowledgement is placed in the right direction. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think. That was way more straight to the point, because I sometimes talk in circles, but in saying that and him talking about influence, we're not just talking about braids and hair, and I want everybody to know that. We're talking about shoes, we're talking about style, we're talking about music, we're talking about dance, we're talking about a lot of forms of art that people don't even realize came from Black culture because other white people or other you know, cultures came out with, and that was the first time it was seen. Just because it's the first time you're seeing it doesn't mean that that's where it came from. Right. And also, I think as much as we have information at our fingertips, and as great as that is, it's also a detriment, because people will Google something and they will click on the first link that they find, take the minimal information, and stop digging.
Right.
And it's like, if I, braids on white woman, who the do you think, and even though she's not white, I mean, because they're Armenian.
Yeah.
What picture do you think is going to come up besides, obviously, Bo Dallas? Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
Or Halsey, who is not, who is actually part black.
Yeah, people don't even realize is half black.
Yeah, so, I mean, when we say do your research and know what you're doing and know where things are coming from, it's like you have to, like, really do your research.
Yeah.
And it's not this surface level.
Right. Which is why people don't do research to begin with. Because researcher leads you down a rabbit hole of other things that you forgot the original purpose of the research. So it takes a lot of time. So if you're not, people don't want to do that. I'm not researching this no more.
I know.
So.
Lazy. Stop being lazy. Do you think black females need more support? And if so, how do you think they could be more supported? Not just by black men, but people in general. Because we've talked about, it's like, you're black. Now you're black and female. And if you're LGBTQ or any of that stuff, now you're black, female, and part of that community. That is a triple whammy.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
No,
there's
it's
absolutely
just
nothing wrong with it, but that's like, you should realize, like, these are the people that need to be supported. And so.
Yeah. Well, women need to be supported more. So let's start there. But yes, definitely, I think, I mean, this saying goes back, decades. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. And that's true on so many levels because, like we were just talking about the Kim Kardashian thing, right, in the braids and all that other stuff. So that's an influence. So that's black women that you're taking the influence from, right, with no credit. Let's talk about, I mean, this might be kind of heavy or whatever, but let's talk about, like people who identify as being gay, right? What do gay men act like? The ones who are like, who may come across as like maybe more effeminate than the others, who do they act like?
Oh, well, more feminine, so I would say more
they act
female.
They act like black women. Yes, honey, bitch.
Oh.
Like the influence comes from black women. So it's hard to, I can't imagine, like, it's hard being a black man because you know what people think about you right off the bat and the trouble you can be in just for being who you are. But think about that and then add being a woman on top of it. So you already don't have any, I feel like women don't have enough rights. They're always trying to tell you what to do with your body. They're always trying to tell you what you can and can't do, how much money you can and can't make, the positions you can and can't be in, where you should and shouldn't be.
What you can and can't wear.
Right. So they're always trying to tell you how you should be as just a woman.
Right.
So now add your race on top of that. So it's just problems compounded on top of problems. Like, it's really insane. And since I'm talking about something different, Pride Month, when that comes, was created by black transgender women.
I did not know that. I had no idea.
So there you go.
Well, good for them, first of all, because that's got to be so rough to be. And I'm not saying this is the order, and I just know factually that this is what we're trying to change. This is the way society views it. Like I said, now you're 3 down, and you have no rights, at least according to society. This is not my viewpoint. This is just the basis of what I'm starting at.
Mm-hmm.
So to be that far down, but decide that we have this whole community to protect. I'm not going to sit here and be this victim of all this stuff. I'm going to create something based off of this experience, even though I'm being treated like shit.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's amazing. Like, and now it's this whole huge thing, and it was pride parades here and there and like all these major cities, and now it's a whole month.
Yeah.
So I think, and I didn't know that until he told me, I think that's amazing. Yeah. So, and I specifically asked him that question because I know that you've grown up around females your whole life. Mm-hmm. So in saying that black females or black transgender females or black females that are somewhere on the LGBTQ, spectrum? Do they call it a spectrum? I don't know.
Hopefully that's not offensive, but that's the first word that came to my mind.
I was thinking of that, but I didn't know if it would be offensive. So hopefully if it's not offensive. But aside from, females being like, oh, like we've talked about, I was nice to him and he thought I was flirting with him. Like we've talked about that a million times. Yeah. Was there anything you ever overheard that was maybe specified for a black female?
I've heard a couple of things because black women have been fetishized for forever. So if you go back to, the 1600s and the slavery and all that stuff happened, right? That's why there's so many mixed kids, because the slave owners would rape the slave women. And I feel like that's kind of always been a thing. So when you're around black women all your life, you hear those things about, people from other races liking them, but giving them like backhanded compliments and the saying like, oh, like you're pretty for a black girl, or like, like things like that. And you're just like, and I feel like it's terrible, but it's also misguided, because I feel like those people who say that don't understand those words. They feel like they're giving a compliment, not understanding that that's not really a compliment to tell somebody they're cute for this. Like you're putting, an asterisk on what that person is or what they look like, or because you're equating it to their level of blackness as to why it may be good or bad. Like I've had plenty of people like tell me, like if I talk to them on the phone, that they didn't know I was black because I sound like a white guy, or you're the whitest sounding black. Like that's the kind of thing that
if he's the whitest sounding black guy, we got issues.
But and so for me, it didn't affect me at all. You're just saying that I speak properly. That's fine. I'm not worried about that at all. But I know when I hear myself, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
But those are the type of things that you deal with. So as a black woman, hearing things like that, or having things personified, or...
Do you think, so in saying that, it brought something else. Do you think that maybe those backhanded compliments, like, let's take the one he used, for example, you're pretty for a black girl. Mm-hmm. Do you also think that on some level, if I'm a white male saying that to a black female, on some level, I have to add that in there, because if I don't, it's wrong for me to think that that person is attractive? Because I am inherently racist.
That's a really good question.
I literally, just as you were talking, like for some reason, that just to me, I don't know if I could survive being black. I'm not, I probably would have knocked that guy out. Like, to me, they're some of the strongest people that I know.
Right.
And so just hearing that and then having the thought that I just had, it's like, I have to add that because it would be wrong if I didn't acknowledge that I thought she was attractive without acknowledging that she's black. So I'm going to say that, and then I got to, like, put a damper on it by mentioning that you're black.
Yeah, like I'm giving you a compliment to say that you're pretty, but I have to throw in for a black girl so that you don't feel too high and mighty, you don't feel too full of yourself. So I raise it and then I smack it back down.
It's a terrible thought, but
Or it could be, like, I hate to use that, people being inherently racist, even though it's true. But I just hate that feeling that that's where we are, where we have to first acknowledge that people grow up or are just racist.
Right.
And it's like you feel bad for humanity. It's like, damn, really? Like you. But anyway, maybe that has, like you said, it has to do with their inherent racism. And so they have to, maybe it's not so much for that person to say you're pretty for black, maybe it's for themselves. And say, oh, you're pretty for a black girl. Like, I'm not supposed to be attracted to.
That's basically what I was.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to be attracted to this black woman because I grew up where it wasn't right, or we looked down upon them, or something like that.
Whatever it was, yeah.
And so, but I feel like you're really attractive. So I have to say that you're attractive, but I have to put the caveat on it.
Yeah.
So that I get back to where I am.
Which is a terrible thought, but I'm trying to think of why that they feel that that's a necessity to, like, add that in there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I just don't understand. Like, if you're going to say that, or if you're going to say, your shoes are nice, but you have a big foot. Like, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, like, why did you say it in the first place?
Right.
Like, just say you have nice shoes. Just say you're attractive. Just say, hey, I like your style. Like,
right.
All those caveats in the second half of the sentence, like, they're completely unnecessary.
Exactly.
I just don't.
But no, I think that was a good analogy. Like, you have nice shoes, but your foot's big. Like.
Or you have nice shoes, but they're kind of dirty. Like, so you're telling me that I don't know how to keep my stuff clean. Like, there's so many examples I can come up with. Like, just don't say the second half of this. Like, the first part is the whole last sentence in and of itself.
Right.
Like, we don't need the conjunction and the second half of the sentence. Just leave it out.
Right. Or you say nothing at all, figure out a different approach.
Oh, I mean, see? More than one way to go about it.
Yeah.
It's perfectly acceptable. Just don't say anything.
Right.
If you can't say anything nice, don't say it. So, I'm going to try to ask everybody this question, and it may or may not get an answer, or may, whatever it is, but in a perfect world scenario. So, like we talked about, us having to obviously assume that some people are inherently racist, or come across them and realize that they are racist or whatever. But in a perfect world, racist or not, I think the biggest thing that people need to be is open-minded and open to change. So let's say in a perfect world that was the case. And there are racist people in the world. What would you, if anything, want to say to them? If their mind and their heart and their openness to change was willing to be there. If there was something that you could say that might make them think, that might change their mind, whatever it would be, is there something that you would want them to know or something that you would say to them?
Wow. I don't know if I could say it. I think that would be a very long, it's a very long answer.
Right.
As I'm going through, like, what I would say or what I would try and do. I think the first thing you have to understand or try and get people to understand when you're talking about racism and race in general is try to see them as people first. Because I feel like when you're talking about people who are racist, the first thing they do is tell you about the stereotypes and what they've heard that's been passed down to them. Mm-hmm. Like, it's always there's this or there's that or they like, but I guarantee you if you ask them about the person that they know of that race that they hate, they like that person.
Oh, well,
like,
yeah.
You know, if you went to a racist person and you said to them, well, what is it about black people you don't like? Just for an example, because you can do this with pretty much any race.
Right.
So, but what is it about black people you don't like? Oh, or you know, what's the stereotypes? They're lazy, or they're on government assistance, and you know they live
all
in
those
all those stereotypes. But it's like, okay, so you have a friend named James, right? He's a black guy. We didn't like, oh, he's not like that. He's different. And it's like, well, if you know one person that is the opposite of the stereotypes and the negativity that you've heard, chances are there's more of them like that. So you already have, you know, done an about face on that person.
You already contradicted what you said.
So it's like, why wouldn't you just look more into that?
Yeah.
And then also, if you're gonna do that, like, statistics can help you back, you know, can help you change some of that stuff. Like, if you were talking about, oh, they're lazy in government assistance, well, we're only 13% of the population, but I think like 67% of the people who are on government assistance are black.
Yeah.
So, you know, so it's like, well, so you kick that one right there. So it's like, those are the things I think you would have to do. You'd have to really sit down with a person and dig deep in their hatred for whatever race it is, and then hit them with the statistics, with the numbers that they can see with their own eyes.
If they were open to facts.
If you're open to the facts.
People don't want no facts.
Oh, no.
People want to go off feeling.
Right.
This is what I feel. And I'm not saying people's emotions aren't valid. They are very much valid.
Of course they are.
Don't, you know, he's always told me, you know, nobody should police your feelings, whatever. You know, feel your emotions, be open, take care of yourself, whatever it is. But there's a difference when it comes to things like this between your emotions and the facts. Mm-hmm. Your emotions don't get to dictate what the facts are and are not.
Exactly.
So, I mean...
Exactly. Because the facts are going to be the facts no matter...
Whether you like them
or not. But your emotion can dictate whether a person is here or not.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, the facts are there, and they're always going to be there. But how you feel about those facts can decide whether a person is going to live.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. No one should have that. No one, man, should have all that power.
I mean, yeah. And the more you pull out some of those lyrics, like we'll see in another interview, somebody else pulls out some other lyrics, if you are into music, and a lot of people are, and a lot of people feel it, you just, like for me, I love lyrics. You gotta listen to the lyrics.
Yeah.
They don't say these things just to say these things. Like, sometimes they say them because you need to be listening to them.
Yeah, they have to give you the knowledge, but in a way that's palatable. Because you just hit people over the head with the facts, and so they're going to be like, man, I don't want to hear this.
They don't want to hear it.
You're just preaching to me. I don't want to hear that. But if you give it to them in a way that they can absorb it and not understand that they know it until that moment comes and they say that lyric and they're like, oh, that's what they meant.
Yep.
Yeah. Aha moment is.
Aha.
This is something.
As I do, or I'm going to ask all of the guests that I interview, we go through, and at the end we talk about an organization or a small business of their choice, preferably black business or minority owned, that needs help or gives back to the community or is involved in the community in some way. So I have asked him to pick an organization, and which organization was it that you picked?
The organization I picked is the Equal Justice Initiative.
Okay.
That's what it is.
And what what do they do?
The Equal Justice Initiative, they basically combat unfair sentences, illegal incarceration, or abuse during your incarceration. And so they've overturned like over 140 wrongful convictions, gotten people like who were wrongfully convicted to be on death row, like gotten them off. They provide, basically they provide legal counsel for people who, you know, can't, they're trying to change the race narrative in the country.
So it's pro bono counsel based on, I would assume, donations because they are a nonprofit,
Yes,
right?
yes, nonprofit.
Yeah,
So yes, you can donate. You can go to eji.org and they'll have all the steps on how you can donate.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is that link will be below. I also will create a fundraiser that will be circling. So either follow me on Instagram, which will be transforming.with.Taryn. That's on Instagram. And then the rest of my personal stuff is either my first and my last name or TLWest04. Savoie's Instagram is...
Mine is black_dynamite21.
So that's him on Instagram.
Twitter is just my name, Savoie21.
All those links will be below. So if you want to talk to him about anything, don't send him hate mail or I will come after you. All those links will be below. We'll be creating a fundraiser for the Equal Justice Initiative. And if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to reach out to myself or Savoie, and we will do our best to open up the floor for more conversations, because we're not going to get anywhere by ignoring this or by continuing these vicious cycles when it comes to race and hate. So we want to create these platforms for conversation and for change and for donations to these causes that are trying also to affect the change. But other than that, thank you for being the first one to sit down with me. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And if you know anybody who wants to be interviewed or has any valuable insight or information, which includes Black history, I would love to interview a Black history professor, anything of that sort. Please reach out to me. I'm starting with all the people that I know, and then I'm going to branch out into hopefully other people that I don't know, because we all want to learn, and I want to get so much good information out there on a variety of subjects, cultures, race, and social issues. But other than that, we'll see you next time on another episode of Transforming the Truth. Thank you.